Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfoud, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
This is an encore presentation of Faith and Sports. Tune in to hear Faith and Sport live Monday afternoons from 2 to 3 right here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. Well, a good Monday afternoon to you. You are listening to Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. You are tuned in for Faith and Sports, the most fun hour on AM radio. We've got fun, faith, and sport, and we hope you're ready for a great show this Monday afternoon. And I'm your co-host, Chris, and producer of the show, and we've got Dr. John Acquaviva in studio right now to kick off this Monday edition of Faith and Sport Live. How you doing, Dr. A?
Good to see you, Chris. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show, however, wherever you're listening. Chris, John, don't we have that music go a little longer?
Yeah, I don't know why. All of a sudden,
I know. I was a little disappointed
like that.
there.
It was weird.
Folks, here's what we're going to do today. We got our hit and miss with Carlos Herrera. He's going to join us on the phone in a couple minutes. We're going to do our weekend headlines. Some stuff, not all stuff, going on in the world of sports. I only got about 5 minutes to cover that. And then our second phone guest is Anne Stricherz. She's an author, a Catholic educator, a coach. She's at St. Francis High School in Mountain View, California. She's also a blogger on faith and sport. We'll talk more about her book, more about her blog, and what she thinks about some of the things going on in the world of sport. And then we'll have our quick Q&A with Dr. A, and we'll have our stat of the week. And I'll give you guys a hint, a little teaser. It has to do, an amazing stat that has to do with the LSU Tigers, in fact, directly related to their championship win from last week. Chris, before we go on any more, how was your week? You know, it seems like about 3 or 4 weeks since we last had this show. Do you feel that way as well?
Yeah. Monday couldn't come soon enough.
I appreciate that. And then you had a good weekend, though?
Yeah, especially on Saturday when my Wolfpack
That's right.
had a great win against the Clemson Tigers.
That's right. In fact, I would say any other week, any other time, any other year, that would be like a normal victory because Clemson's not that good, but we'll talk about why that was such a big victory.
Yeah.
Anyway, did you watch football yesterday?
No, I didn't get to see any football.
Okay. You didn't miss much because the KC Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers really showed why they were the best team and the favorites and the home team and so forth.
Well, actually, I did see a little bit of the Chiefs game, and that was a good game.
Yeah, it was. Ultimately, I thought that was a decent game, but they just flexed their muscle and they just, they just, as soon as they fell behind, they're like, okay, we fell behind enough. Let's show who the better team is, and
right.
We're going to go ahead and win. So that was good stuff. Is Carlos on the line? We're going to get to
I think we are.
Okay.
Let me check.
All right, let's check with that. Folks, before Carlos Herrera joins us for our weekly hit or miss, here's a couple things that you can do. If you want to chime into the show, especially when Carlos and I talk about a hit or miss, and you want to chime in on that, in particular, I can tell you I'm going to talk about the Astros and that cheating scandal that's going on in the world of Major League Baseball. I'm also going to talk about Women's World Cup going to every 2 years maybe rather than every 4 years. There's 3 ways that you can contact us. You can call in 704-596-4900, or you can tweet me at j.acquaviva1, j.acquaviva1, that's the number 1, or you can just email me the old-fashioned way at faithandsport@wingate.edu. And again, that's faith and sport, that's A-N-D between faith and sport at wingate.edu. And I'd love to hear from you folks. In fact, even if it's not to ask a question to Carlos Herrera or myself, make a comment about the show. Tell us, in particular, what you think about Ed Orgeron's voice, right, Chris? That's one of the things.
That's right.
It's one of the things that people get, right? And they could chime in. What do they think about faith and sports? Should I go in a different direction? Should I have different guests? Is there somebody in the community that we think we should talk to or talk about? What's going on in the world of sport? Do I touch on the stuff in the world of faith and sport that we should be touching on? I want to hear from you folks. Thank you for joining us either way. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I'm an exercise science professor at Wingate University. In fact, normally, Chris, I leave there. I teach in the mornings on Monday, and I jet on over here. I put on my cape and my little mask, and I do
Detroit hat.
my little Detroit hat, and I have a little, symbol on my chest that says F and S, standing for Faith in Sport, and I do the show. But there was no classes today, so I just had the show. So it should be a particularly good show, and maybe even better than normal. What do you think? Okay, but one of the reasons it's going to be good is it makes you and I laugh. We can tease the fans. I've given a couple teasers at this point, but we're going to have a little audio from Ed Orgeron.
That's right.
I know you and I laughed just talking about it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he's the coach of LSU.
Yep.
And if you've just listened to the show the last couple years, or weeks, I should say, Chris and I laugh like we're little school children because he's just got the greatest voice. But, of course, we're not the only ones to think that.
Right.
All right, folks, you join us for Faith in Sport. Happy Monday to you. Let's get to our hit and miss with Carlos Herrera, certified soccer coach, good friend of mine, a big fan of Faith in Sport, a faithful guy. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I told Carlos you might get to talk a little bit today. We both know how much you like hearing your own voice, John.
Welcome. Glad to be back, Dr. Acquaviva and Chris.
Oh, yeah, this is good stuff. Carlos, what is your hit or miss of the week?
So, bringing up some old news, but this weekend, looking at our ESPN site, the Tariq Hill, I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah,
this.
I heard about this.
But this is an old theme of ours that has come back, which is Tariq Hill, which is a little different, gets introduced, comes out of the tunnel when they're doing player introduction, so game hasn't even started.
Yep.
So he comes out of the tunnel, he goes down on all fours, lifts up his leg like if he was a dog peeing, and keeps going. And if you tuned into one of our shows before, there was a player that did that, Elijah Moore, when he was playing Ole Miss, cost the team the ability to win the game.
That's right, that was huge.
And Odell Beckham did it a couple of years before that against, when he was playing the Eagles, did it against the Giants. He got $12,000 and a flag. So the question that I have is, or the comment was, is this as egregious as when those two players did it, or not a big deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, here's my very first thing, because I saw this when I was in preparation for the show. Now, this, of course, was before the game, so I know that he was fined, but, of course, nothing can take place in the forum or that directly relates to the game. But here's the real question, Carlos.
Was he fined for that, for what he did?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, let's see. I'm reading it right now. Is this it? No, wait a minute. This is something else. I actually went to the wrong website. But here's the question regardless. First of all, I'll be surprised if he doesn't get some type of penalty. But really, Carlos, this is the real question. Whether he's fined or not, whether he's suspended or not, whether it has some impact on the outcome of the game or actually the game. Like, for instance, if somebody does something like this before the game, they could, whoever wins the coin toss, the other team could get penalized and where they kick from or where they receive, whatever the case is. But the question lies in this. Is this funny, clever, or entertaining to any degree, to any, even a small percentage of our viewers in the NFL? It's ridiculous. It's childish. It just seems it's
definitely childish. I will say this, and this is different. I have a kind of a different take on this, right?
Yeah.
And
let's hear it.
I'm not a fan of it. I think it's kind of demeaning, even if it's, I don't know if it's an inside joke or whatever. But the biggest difference is it was a Kansas City Chief player coming out of his own stadium, did it in his own stadium, did it coming out of the tunnel, did a little dog thing. I don't have a problem with it, right? Like, I don't think it's any different than, doing the Superman, sign when you come out of the tunnel or doing something else. It's for entertainment, right? If he were on the opposing team's field and he did that after doing some sort of performance where he's sort of, bad, sportsmanship, then that would bother me. But in this case, so it's kind of interesting, same action, completely different, I think, fault to it, other than being maybe a little childish,
Okay, so this is, in essence, every time you come on, we talk about a hit or miss. So in a way, this is a miss, but maybe a gentle miss. Like, you don't see this as egregious, and there's a lot of other things that happen in the world of sports that are directly related that you find a far more offensive or more egregious kind of error.
Yes, I think this is kind of one of those things that, we kind of go back and forth a lot of times, particularly on this show, talking about what's the moral implication, right?
Yeah.
And when we talked about the original, action that both Odell Beckham and that, Ole Miss player did,
That's right.
Elijah Moore,
Yep.
that was, I would say, it was, bordering on sinful. It was sinful, bordering on sinful. Culture, team, poor sportsmanship, right? This one, same action, completely different intent. I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a miss, but it's not. It's a little pat. Like, hey, come on, could you come up with something a little better than that?
Yeah. Be a little more clever. And in other words, you're just saying it's more bad taste than it is anything. Yeah. It's not a moral issue or whatever. No, I would have to agree with that. Ultimately, this isn't a moral issue, but certainly this is in severe bad taste. These adults are watching as much as well as kids. And if you did a poll, you would know as well as I do, especially since it's been done. It's possible that when somebody else did it months ago or years ago, whatever the first person did it, you might kind of laugh at it. And some of them are downright clever, these little antics or the little celebrations that they have. Like the one I saw the other day yesterday with Kansas City was after somebody scored, they acted like two of the guys were in unison and they acted like they were on a surfboard and they were paddling with their hands and they got up and they surfed. I thought that was pretty clever. I don't particularly like the antics after a score because it's clear that they spent time choreographing it, thinking about it, talking about it, and so forth. But the acting like a male dog and peeing on your what does a dog do that for? I forgot. To they're territorial, right? That's
relieve himself. One of the
two. That's true. But you and I both know that's not why they're doing that, right? It's a territorialism, and
I guess he's marking his field. Right?
That's right. He's marking his field. He's marking. Well, you're being more gentle than I would be, buddy, because I definitely. But I agree with you that you brought it up because we talk about a hit or miss, and it's ultimately a miss. You're just saying this is not a moral issue. This is not sinful. This is just in bad taste.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
I agree. All right, so I'm hoping that you are familiar with, to an extent, what I'm going to talk about. Mine, like yours, was a miss. I thought this was a little more egregious. It has to do with Jennifer Mendoza. And Jennifer, Jessica Mendoza. And she's an analyst on Sunday Night Football for Major League Baseball. And she was the first gal to do ESPN, become an analyst, not just for ESPN baseball, but I think any major league team. She's the first person to do analysis for a Major League Baseball game on a regular basis. And I find her particularly good. All her comments, and of course, as you can imagine, Carlos, when she first got this job, people were thinking, okay, the color analyst is designated in almost in every case, at every major league team, even minor league teams, for people who played the game. And of course, she couldn't have played Major League Baseball for obvious reason. No woman has ever played Major League Baseball. But I find her, despite that, she is particularly insightful. I think she knows exactly when and how long to talk. She has her spot, and that's the case with all color analysts. They're not the play-by-play person. They don't have the microphone, so to speak, most of the time. They only have it a small percentage of the time. But she was
an American softball player.
Yes, right? That's right. Yeah, in fact,
went to the Olympics as well a couple times.
Yeah, that might be the case with this gal. And to tell the truth, I read about it. I remember when she first became an analyst, and that sounds familiar, but it sounds like you may know that better than I. And
yes, I heard an interview with her, and so I'm a little familiar with her, actually.
Yeah, and like I said, she seems to be a likable gal. However, she said something in the light of the Astros, what I call sign gate, the situation that we broke to the Catholic audience during this show. In fact, at this very moment, just about last week. And just to remind folks what happened, the Houston Astros, in the year they won the World Series, 2018, and they probably were guilty of doing it again this year, but the Major League Baseball did this major investigation, and it was as a result they found out that this team, the Houston Astros, maybe among others, But this team, what they did is rather than stealing the signs the old-fashioned way, like when there's a guy in second or a guy in first and he's looking at the catcher signals and he maybe relays something to the hitter, some type of sign language, but the Astros did something different. They filmed it from a center field camera. They relayed it back to the dugout. The dugout somehow would notify the batter. This one clip shows it that they hit like a garbage can, and 1 was for a fastball, 2 was for off speed. Anyway, a lot has come down from this. 3 major league managers have been fired, including the Astros manager. The other 2 were directly related to this 2 years ago and were with the Astros. The GM was fired. There's a $5 million fine, and so forth. However, Mendoza came on. She was on ESPN's Go Looking Wingo, and she said the following. She said she disagreed with Mike Fiers. This is the gentleman who was a pitcher for the Houston Astros at the time. And she said, quote, "To go public, yeah, that didn't sit well with me." And remember, this is what she's referring to is this Fiers pitcher who was then a member of the Houston Astros, and said, "Honestly, it made me sad for the sport. That's how this all got found out," Mendoza said. This wasn't something that Major League Baseball naturally investigated or that even other teams complained about, but that it came from within. It was a player that was part of it, that benefited from it during the regular season and when he was a part of the team. And I understand what she's saying is, hey, you were a part of this. You benefited from it. You have a ring because of this. And now you're ratting on the team. And she went on to say, "I totally get telling your future teammates, helping them win, letting people know." In other words, he's with the Houston Astros, or he's with the Oakland A's. He went to the Tigers first, and the Tigers traded him to the Oakland A's. And so what she's saying is, okay to tell other people, like, hey, these guys are going to cheat. We have to be a little more secretive on how we, how the catcher and the pitcher communicate with one another. But she ended with saying, but to go public with it and call them out and start all of this, it's tough to swallow. But here's my take on those comments, and here's my take on her attitude about this. Is she saying you can tell people, but you only tell the people from within? And of course, the whole thing is this is exactly how things are kept secret. You don't tell anybody. And right. I give credit to this pitcher for saying, wait a minute, something was done wrong. And granted, he benefited from it. He has a ring because of it. But he still did the right thing. This is a form of cheating. This goes beyond the boundaries. And I agree. And you and I both know this, Carlos. There is all kinds of cheating in just about every sport. It depends on the situation. It depends on the sport in which way people cheat. But it's been going on for years. The difference is, and there is a line. And is it a faint line? Is it a small line? Is it a thin line? Absolutely. But the fact is, there is a line between me signaling to you what the next pitch is coming, right? But then taping it and then reviewing the tape and seeing the signals and seeing the pattern of the signals and then relaying it to the dugout. People were texting each other and so forth. This goes to another level. And I love this because ultimately this was seen by this pitcher Fiers as a moral issue. He said this was wrong. And even if he did it at the time, it doesn't mean him addressing this at a later time, at a later date, it doesn't mean that it was wrong for which they were doing. In other words, just because he benefited from it, it doesn't mean that he shouldn't actually say something in the future. And
yeah, it's really interesting, but she's almost acting as if she were a baseball, played in the baseball, and it's kind of like the, pardon the expression, but the old boys club or men's club, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of keeping it within our own. We'll deal with it ourselves.
Yep.
It's almost like she was acting from that perspective, but I think she's wrong, right? Like,
yeah.
She, for whatever reason, and I don't know, self-serving or what made him come out, right? Maybe he was playing on other teams and he didn't, maybe the whole time he's watching the World Series, he's like, I can't stand it, that they might win, they're probably cheating. I mean, who knows why it came out, right? But it had to. There's no way they would have dealt with this in the way they did, and it should be. It's like firing a gun over somebody's bow. This should be a warning to anybody and everybody. Right. Like, if you try doing this, we catch you. It's a big deal. No, I'm so glad. Completely disagree with her.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fairness to her, and in fairness to the situation, she did come on, I think it was Twitter, and she did make a statement where she backpedaled, but she didn't backpedal completely. She just backpedaled a step, I think, because two things usually happen there. And one, it's usually the latter versus the former. The former would be this, that she felt bad about her comments and she thinks she was wrong. But you can bet, Carlos, that she got an ESPN did.
Yeah, she either got lambasted on Twitter or whatever, Instagram, or her bosses said,
that's right.
You can't hold that position.
That's right.
That's not a good position.
That's right. In fact, somebody else probably told her. Social media, her bosses, somebody else at ESPN, somebody probably said something. And I'll end with this. One of her comments was, there were no other complaints from other teams. And I'm thinking about, it's not just about teams. There needs to be somebody to oversee this situation. What about management? Did management like this? Does management ultimately approve of something like this? And further, it goes to the fans. What do they think about this? And almost nobody I know of, even the biggest baseball fans I know of, Carlos, they did not support this. They did not go, well, it's just a form of cheating. This stuff happens. And I think you and I, and probably with a lot of our listeners, and especially Major League Baseball fans, or including Major League Baseball fans, would probably agree with the penalties that were handed down to them.
Absolutely. They had to do something. I mean, this is so bad for the game in a number of ways. And just because nobody else complained doesn't mean that
that's right.
that it should have been done. That's like saying, well, nobody saw me steal, so
right.
What's wrong with that? Stop stealing then.
That's a great point. Folks, that's Carlos Herrera you're listening to. He is a certified coach in Northern Virginia area. He's a big sports fan, faithful guy, and a longtime friend of mine. And I thank you, Carlos, for coming on just about every week to chat about this. I enjoy this segment so much. Just because
pleasure to have you on, and I hope everybody has a great holiday, the Martin Luther King Day. And
listen.
Go rights. We need our rights.
Yeah, that's right.
Without anybody infringing on them.
Very good.
They're right.
But listen, you were ready to sign off there, but I did want to get your take. I think it's safe to say that you're a bigger soccer fan than any other sport. Is that safe to say?
Soccer, football.
Yeah, baseball, hockey. Yeah, they're all. No, so let me ask you this. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, the FIFA president came out and said, referring to the Women's World Cup, which is held every 4 years, and just like the Men's World Cup, and he said, let's take a look at this and maybe consider offering it every 2 years. Now, without going into any of the details on maybe why or speculating why, what's your instinct on this possible decision?
I think it's about money.
Yep.
And maybe it has something to do, now we're speculating, right? But I think it's about money, but I also think it's about popularity. I think the women's game is very popular, and I don't think the women's games get the level of fans and attention that they do in the World Cup. I mean, it's absolutely amazing how much support they get during the World Cup, and then when they go back to their respective women's leagues, I don't think they get that same level of popularity translates back to their league.
But does this bother you? Like, do you think this would is this
diminish the
that's the word,
uniqueness of the 4 years?
Yep.
I mean, it bothers me that you got to wait 4 years for the Olympics. You got to wait 4 years for the World Cup. Could you make it 3 years? That would be nicer. But 2 years, that seems like
too quick.
At that point, it's just another tournament, right?
I think that's really the point. I understand the money. I understand they want to elevate it. And by the way, it's really only elevated here in this country. And this is a big country where there's a lot of viewership. A lot of money is generated through everything, through every possible sport or every sport, and especially Women's World Cup. But it is not huge worldwide. I mean, there's no comparison on how many people watch the Women's World Cup final, for instance, worldwide compared to how many watch it here. And of course, with the men, it's really popular here as well as worldwide. And I agree that I think, I think that it won't make it special. And that's really the whole thing, is that it is truly special. And speaking of social media, we referred to it with the Jessica Mendoza thing. I think this is a typical thing, Carlos, an example of this, FIFA president Gianni Infantino, when they do stuff like this, they put it out on social media and they gauge people's interest in it. In other words, people are going to respond to this. And if they don't respond negatively, or there's a lot of positive statements, and there's a lot of positive feeling about this, I think it starts to, more conversations start to move forward.
Sure, it's just like their market research. Just send it out there, see what people think, gauge the response, and entertain whether they'll do further research and analysis for it.
I never thought about that. It is market research, and the two better things about it is that it doesn't cost any money, and it's immediate. Right?
Yeah.
You could make a statement like this, and you could literally get 1 million people's opinion within 24 hours, maybe less. Well, Carlos, this is another great conversation, buddy. I thank you for your time. I really do. I know you're a busy guy. You might very well have off today, but you're a working guy like almost all of our listeners, like almost all of us are. And I mean that. And even though you and I chat off air, and I thank you off air, I also want to do it publicly and through these airwaves. I thank you so much for your time, effort.
Well, I appreciate it. I love doing this, and I actually am working. I'm at my office.
Of course.
And I enjoy it, and I actually thank you that you're doing this. This is a great show. I love the topic, sports and ethics. There couldn't be a more welcome platform, so I'm glad you're doing it.
I appreciate it, bud. Listen, you have a good day, and we'll talk soon.
You too. Take care.
See you, buddy. That was Carlos Herrera, as always. I think he gets better and better, doesn't he?
Yeah.
In fact, that's one of the things about being on radio. And, Chris, you know this. Being on radio, being on TV, you don't go on and are good. It takes a while. And I thought Carlos from the start, the very first time a couple years ago he was on my show, I was like, geez, he's a natural. And it's so tough to be a natural on air, whether it's radio or TV. And he just keeps getting better. And I think this is a great thing that we've figured out, because Ed's here once a month, and the other 3 weeks we have Carlos on, and I think it's a great conversation.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this. We're going to go to break in a couple minutes, but first we're going to do weekend headlines.
Okay.
Cue it up, Chris.
All right.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
It's time for Weekend Headlines with Dr. A.
Folks, here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a little bit about college football, the NFL, NCAA basketball, and then Major League Baseball. And we'll tie that whole conversation up that we had with Carlos and my hit, in fact. College football, the big news, of course, is really only one thing. LSU, Louisiana State University, beat Clemson for the national title. They are the undeniable champs. And I think I'm in agreement with a lot of other folks, and that is perhaps one of the greatest college football teams of all time, and congrats to them. And I understand LSU coach Ed Orgeron had something to say about this as well. What was that, Chris?
Yes, he did.
Grit, determination, belief. We always believed that we would win the game. We knew they were a great football team. They won 29 in a row. It was going to be a battle, but we was in it for 60 minutes. Grit, determination, belief. We always believed that we would win the game. We knew they were a great football team. They won 29 in a row. It was going to be a battle, but we was in it for 60 minutes.
There you go. Remember, Ed, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you. That guy is great. He's become so popular just because of his voice alone, but he is one heck of a coach. There's a big story there. Read about that guy and how and why he ended up getting that job. But congrats to Ed Orgeron and LSU Tigers. I thought they were very deserving.
Yeah.
Fantastic win. Off to the NFL. The Super Bowl is set. Chiefs beat the Titans in the AFC Championship game. The 49ers beat the Packers in the NFC Championship game. Let's see. 2 weeks from yesterday, a week from this Sunday, February 2nd, the game will be played in Miami.
Yep.
The big news in the local, sports, in particular, local NFL news, Luke Kuechly retired.
That's right.
Yeah, he's only 28 years old. A lot of people were really surprised by that. But I think it was just the initial announcement of it that surprised people. Because, Chris, more and more people are retiring because of the concussion issue. And even though he's walking away healthy, he knows very well he could be one of those many people that's been hit so many times in the head, it's going to affect him when he's 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, whatever the case is. So good luck to Luke. I mean this. I hope he truly retires, but it's quite possible he wakes up come the fall and goes, I want to play another couple years. He'll be like Ed Orgeron and goes, I have grit, determination, I want to play.
Yeah, who knows? He may decide to head to Washington and play for the Redskins to play for his old coach, Ron Rivera, again.
I didn't even think of that. That is quite possible. But, of course, he would probably be under contract here. But, yeah, that's really interesting. But the real story, in my mind, over the weekend was Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And I'll just mention this before I move on to the next segment. They were down 24-0 against the Texans last Sunday, and he led them back. And not only did he win that game, they won by like 25 points.
Yeah.
They were down 24-0. And yesterday they were down 17-7 against the Titans. I think I said the Titans both times. Texans last week, Titans yesterday. He's down 17-7. Not near as big as behind in the points, but boy, he came back. That guy is terrific.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting Super Bowl.
Two best teams for sure. In fact, that's one of our questions is, are they the two best teams? And you'll hear my response after the break. NCAA basketball, we have another new number one team. This week, it's Baylor. It's the 7th number one team. It's like the world record for number one teams. And we're only halfway through the year. And remember, I mentioned this 2 weeks ago. There's the record is 6 in one season, and we're only halfway through, and we've had 7. I think that's amazing. Baylor's number 1, Gonzaga number 2, Kansas number 3, San Diego State and FSU round out the top 5. Good stuff. Anyway, Chris, the big news was at least in your world, was Clemson basketball.
No, actually, it's Wolfpack basketball. They win over Clemson.
That's right. Sorry about that. That's right. NC State. Now, here's why that was such a big victory. The other day is because before NC State beat Clemson the other day, the 2 previous games, Clemson played Duke, beat them.
Yep.
The game before that, Clemson beat UNC. Now, here's the question, and I should know this as Mr. Host of Faith in Sport, but when was the last time Clemson, not in football, Chris, but in basketball, beat Duke and UNC, not only in the same year, but in the same week? And then they run up against the juggernaut of NC State, and who wins there, brother?
NC State,
the Wolfpack. Fantastic.
Yep, and NC State, they play Virginia tonight. It's going to be a good game at 7 o'clock.
That's right. Very good. So one more thing before we go to break. Major League Baseball, and I've touched on this during our hit and miss with Carlos, but 3 major league managers have been fired or resigned directly as a result of Signgate. Now, by the way, I've orchestrated that term, right? Because there's Watergate, and then there was Spygate and all these other gates. So I call it Deflategate. That's right. Very good. I forgot about that one. Yeah, when the Patriots got in trouble for deflating the ball because it's easier to catch. That's right. But I thought it was really neat because we broke the story to our listening audience just last week. But this is a huge thing for 3 managers within 3 or 4 days. And the amazing thing is Carlos Beltran, who was a part of the Astros, he was a player, it was his final year. He just got hired this winter as the manager for the New York Mets. And before he even coached his first game, he got fired. Actually, he resigned. I think he stepped down. But I'm wondering, when was the last time that happened? Folks, if you have the answer to that, please email me, text me, Twitter me. Actually, it's tweet me is the term. Do any of those things. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport. Right after this, we're going to have a conversation with Anne Stricherz, who's an author, a Catholic educator, and coach, and she has great things to say about the world of faith in sport. Obviously, that's why we're having her. And then we have our quick Q&A with Dr. A after our conversation with Ann, and then we'll finish off our program on Faith in Sport with our stat of the week. Chris, let me hand it over to you. Let's take a couple minute breaks, folks. Stay tuned. Anne Stricherz is on the line, and she's going to join us for a great conversation in just a couple minutes.
That's right. You're listening to Faith in Sport here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, and we want to mention to you, while we have the chance here before we go to break, that you've got plenty of opportunities to catch up on Faith in Sport. If you happen to miss any of the show today, you've got plenty of opportunities to hear an encore presentation of Faith in Sport here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270. We're also streaming on carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And you can hear an encore presentation of Faith in Sport Monday nights at 10, Tuesdays at 8, Wednesdays at 11, Thursdays at 10, Fridays at 11, Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5, and Sunday afternoons from 2 to 3. So you've got no excuse to miss Faith and Sport here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. So here at Encore Presentation, if you happen to miss any of Faith and Sport live here on Monday afternoons from 2 to 3. And we've got more Faith and Sport live coming up right after the break here on Carolina Catholic Radio, AM 1270 WCGC.
AM 1270 Catholic Radio Charlotte is a 100% listener-supported 501c3 nonprofit. Please donate, volunteer, and pray for us.
Would you recognize the face of human trafficking? In honor of National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, the Charlotte Diocese Anti-Trafficking Task Force and St. Therese Parish will host a free event on human trafficking and sexual exploitation in our community. The forum will take place Friday, January 31st from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at St. Therese Parish in Mooresville. Child exploitation is one of the fastest growing crimes in our nation, and we believe more parents, school and community leaders need to understand how traffickers and predators work and keep our children safer. This forum will provide this information and offer practical tips, hotline numbers, and resources to address human trafficking and sexual exploitation. We must all stand together against this fast-growing criminal industry to learn how to take action and better protect our children. Thank you.
As we enter the new year, please prayerfully discern turning off the noise of secular media and turning on EWTN Carolina Catholic Radio, heard locally on AM 1270 Catholic Radio Charlotte. Every issue in the news today is thoroughly discussed from a truly Catholic perspective, helping you understand, live, and defend your faith with confidence. For more information on what role you can play, please contact us through our website, mobile app, or by email to feedback@carolinacatholicradio.org. Carolina Catholic Radio and you, together, it's the best way to live your day.
Hi folks, Dr. John Acquaviva here, host of one of the local shows on Carolina Catholic Radio called Faith and Sport. I invite you to check out my new book, Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. This book is meant to address one of our culture's silent soul killers, feeling terrible about how we look. But remember, God has something to say about this as well. That's Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching, available at tanbooks.com or Amazon. And be sure to join me each Monday at 2 p.m. for Faith and Sport.
And speaking of Faith and Sport, we're back here for more Faith and Sport live on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270 Charlotte. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And now we're going to kick it back over to Dr. A to continue on the show today and bring on our special guest for the show.
Very good, Chris. Thank you very much. Folks, let's just bring her on right now. Anne Stricherz, she's a Catholic educator and coach. She's at St. Francis High School in Mountain View, California, just right outside of San Francisco. And she's also a blogger on sports and faith. In fact, she talks about, through her blog, a lot of the same stuff that we talk about here. She has a different take on it. I want to welcome her to the show right now. Anne, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, John. How are you? Good to chat again. It's been a little while.
It has been a little while, and I know your schedule's different at your new school. And it used to be available on when we were on. We had Faith and Sport, the same title, but we were on a different radio Catholic network, which was called Radio Maria, and now we're on Carolina Catholic Radio. But yeah, thank you for joining us, and let's get right to it. Your blog is sportsandspirituality.blogspot.com, and tell us about, why did you start this? In fact, you're in your 10th year, aren't you, Anne, doing this?
Yeah. So, in December, thank you, I celebrated 10 years of blogging, and that's a nice milestone. I guess so that would have been 2009. Awesome. I heard a radio interview. I listened to my local sports station is KNBR, 680, now on FM radio as well. And the two hosts interviewed, he is now the University of Oregon the golf coach, former golfer Casey Martin, and he's a devout Christian, and the way Casey spoke about his faith just made such an impression on me that I wanted to learn more about his life and his story and his, specifically his faith in Christ and how it motivates him and carries over to the golf course. So out of that, I wrote an article, and I had written a couple of articles I accompany students on immersion and service trips, and I think whenever you have a formative experience like that, it has to go somewhere. So writing was a good place for that. And blogging, at that point in time, I wrote about this. Like I feel like 1 in every 4 people had a blog. It wasn't uncommon. Now it seems that podcasts are a little more the norm, and I've dabbled in that a little bit. But writing is just for me, it's been a spiritual discipline. And the more you write, the better you get. And you're supposed to do it regularly, so a blog provides the place for that. And
Anne, tell us about this past blog that you've posted, or one of the most recent ones that you thought was particularly, you maybe thought was particularly going to be moving to the reader, that was important to your readers for this blog. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think a seminal one, you can see how many people read what you write, but recently this one got a lot of press. I think some of my best writing comes out of experiences of being in a Catholic school, so just being part of a community. There is a student, he's an alum of St. Ignatius College Prep, where I taught for 16 years. He's now at UCLA, unbelievably talented dancer. He was part of the dance and drill team. They perform at halftime for basketball games and different student rallies. But this young man kind of took a risk because there wasn't really that many male students. I mean, there might be 1 or 2, but as a freshman, he went out and he just grew in talent and ability. And he was uncompromising in his sharing of his gift.
Sure.
And it really made an impression. I mean, when a young person has been given that gift by God, but uses it to kind of magnify, the beauty of, human creation. Can't help but notice. Anyways, he's now at UCLA, and they have a dance team that performs at halftime at basketball games, and there was an article in the LA Times about him, and he's kind of the center person in this dance routine, and he's the first male dancer in this group, and honestly, I can't think of a good argument for why in that sense, a man couldn't be part of this group. It's very, the moves now, too, are very athletic. There's a lot of just the demands on the body, and also just, the spirit. You can see he dances with passion and purpose, and I was really excited to see where his talent has taken him.
Sure. Folks, we're talking to Anne Stricherz, Catholic educator and coach. She's also a blogger. Check that out at sportsandspirituality.blogspot.com. But also, she is an author of a book fairly recently that came out, Prayer and Practice with Purpose, a playbook for the spiritual development of athletes. And I'm going to take us down a road. I think this is a question I actually notified you that I was going to ask you this question. I think this is probably the most difficult question I can ask any of our guests that try to further deepening our faith through sport and improving morality and ethics and sportsmanship in the world of sport. And before I ask the question, which is actually, let me ask the question first, and then I'm going to frame it a little bit, and I want you to respond. Are we making a difference to athletes and all others involved in sport? And when I say we, me as this, I like to talk about sportsmanship and ethics, and you like to talk about the relationship between sports and spirituality and so forth. And there's really 2 paths that a lot of radio show hosts, bloggers, and other people have taken down this road. And one of them is, I think it's more what you do, and that is seeing the gift of God, seeing that sport is a gift, and that the body, that the way we lend itself to sport is a gift. Among other things that you talk about. And I like to focus more on sportsmanship, ethics, and morality as it relates to sport, not just for the coach, but for the athlete, I should say, but also for the coach, for administrators, referees, and especially parents, because those are the biggest people. That's the biggest group of people that are involved in sport. Are we making a difference, do you think? And if we are, please give an example.
Yeah, well, John, I'm laughing. So I live in San Francisco. 49ers could be in the Super Bowl. We're really excited. We were worried that yesterday we might play the Seattle Seahawks. And if you follow Russell Wilson, he's just unbelievably positive, right? They said no one in the NFL uses the word belief more than Russell Wilson.
Awesome.
But I guess I feel like I'm channeling Russell Wilson here, but by being positive and choosing to use the word believe. But it's a compelling essay. It's in a book called Youth, Sport, and Spirituality, and the book is compiled by Patrick Kelly, a Jesuit priest who teaches the class I teach at Seattle University. And the specific essay is by Daniel Dombrowski, and it says, "What is sport? What should it be?"
Yeah.
And he raises your question, and he says there's plenty of examples where the answer is yes, and there are just as many examples where the answer is no, right? Yep. And so it's kind of this, we're in this middle ground. But I work at a Catholic high school. Certainly CYO sports are abounding. I think, we have to ask the question at our schools. First of all, today, why are Catholic schools even open? Because the cost is, incredible. I think the formation piece and the grounding in the faith is really our mission. That's why we exist, because we are providing an education in a different way. So I do believe that coaches have a moral obligation to include, faith formation as part of athletics. And so to give an example, one of the things we really work on is to pray with young men and women, not just at the beginning of the game. Right. And the analogy would be, do you only pray when you need something, right? Help me pass this test, get the job, whatever it is.
Right.
But over the course of a season, we're integrating prayer in a different ways. We're doing communal prayer, be it through, we have students go to our Wednesday morning flagpole service. Maybe it's team mass. Maybe it's just time for silence. God speaks to us in the silence, right? But all of those ways that, and then also praying. Of course, you should pray before a contest. Why would you not? You want God's guidance and health, and you pray for well-being, and I think part of that is you learn how to pray, right? Yep. How to pray is there's that attitude. Anything is prayer. Well, it's like, okay, but there are ways we should pray. Like how we communicate, if it's a relationship with God, how do we communicate with people, right? Anyone can communicate, but how do we communicate with others? And it's the same idea with prayer. So I read about that a lot in my class, that students really do value the experience of prayer with each other. And I think that roots them in a way that might be different if we didn't have that.
Folks, you're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. This is Faith and Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We're talking with Catholic educator and Catholic coach at a high school in Mountain View, California, St. Francis, Anne Stricherz, and she's also a blogger. So check that out at sportsandspirituality.blogspot.com. And before we go, I mentioned your book a couple minutes ago. By the way, that was a great piece that you just talked about on prayer. And Chris, we're gonna have to collect that, and I think we're gonna make that one of our just to finish that thought, Chris, we're gonna make that one of our segments to promote the show, I think. Right. So good stuff there, Ann. This was a great segment. Even though we got a couple minutes left, I just love what you just said about praying with your athletes. Your book, Prayer and Practice with Purpose. Give us a synopsis. If somebody purchased that book, what would they be getting?
Yeah, so a coach, an athletic director, even a parent, there's 30 different ways to pray with your athletes, with your team, or pray for your athletes, your team. It's very practical in the sense of David Brooks writes about this in his book, The Second Mountain. He says, I'm not really a writer, I just collect ideas.
Sure.
And I felt that way about this. I collected what people were already doing. The personality. One of the things I love about sport is just there's different personalities to sport, just like your children have different personalities. Right? Your lacrosse team is going to be different than your swimmers. Golfers are very different than maybe your water polo team. So girls are different than boys, right? Yep. And so the prayers, there's 30 different ways to pray, some individually, some as a team or community. Again, how to pray with specific groups, different non-traditional ways, some ways to integrate Catholic tradition and spirituality, I think in fresh ways that I got from different schools throughout the country, just from my friends and people that I know who coach. The other part is how to build community and to use sport as a mechanism for that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes our teams I see this, they become their own friend group, which is great. They take on a identity, and that's positive, but it can, there we go, back to the ethics piece, John, it can go negative too if it's exclusive, if it sends the wrong message. So what can we do with those teams? Like, what are some traditions, some rituals? Maybe it's not about prayer, but it's about service. Maybe it's about including the larger student body. So 30 different ways to do that with your team.
Awesome. Anne Stricherz, your book, Pray and Practice with Purpose, a playbook for the spiritual development of athletes. Where can our listeners purchase that book?
Yeah, I think the best way is just on Amazon. I assume you've heard of that.
Who's the publisher?
I'll leave any editorial comments on Amazon to the side. Or people can contact me directly, and I'll sign it. And my favorite thing is to hear how people are using the book. So if you purchase it, I'm happy to send. It's $20 plus shipping. That includes shipping. I'll sign it, and my only request is that you let me know at some point what worked.
Very good.
Exciting.
And how can they get in touch with you to get your address and other contact info?
Yeah, so my information's on my blog, but really it's my first and last name at gmail.com.
Very good. I'll give that out, and I'll spell that out for the folks who may not have a pen and pencil handy. And before you go, I just want to give you a send-off of this. I'll be asking our listening audience to pray for you and your continued service to sports and to the church. And thank you for joining us today on Faith in Sport.
Thank you, John, for having me. I've been frustrated personally that I couldn't give more time this year, so I'm really glad. I told my students today is not a day off. Dr. King did not give his life so that they could sleep in or play video games. It's a day on. So how can we serve, and how can we reach out to others to build the kingdom of God?
That's right.
He called us to do.
Very good.
Here and now, right?
I love it. I love it. You continue to have people work even on the day off. It's a day on. Very good, Ann. You take care, and we'll talk soon, I hope.
Okay. Thanks, John. All the best. See
ya. Well, there you have it, folks. Anne Stricherz. By the way, ANNESTRICHERZ. And again, you can contact her through sportsandspirituality.blogspot.com. If you just put in Anne Stricherz, Catholic educator, Catholic coach, you'll end up on her blog spot and you can get that information. I love that, Chris. That was really neat. She's one of the first people to do that. We've had several people that have written books, but she's like, contact me directly, send me $20, I'll sign the book for you or anybody else you want, especially if you're a coach or you're dealing or a parent of an athlete. I think that would be a great get. All right, Chris, we only have a couple minutes left. So but we also are almost done with everything that we have on our docket here today, and that is we have the quick Q&A with Dr. A, and then we're going to do our stat of the week, which only takes a minute. Why don't you shoot a question at me, brother, a quick Q&A.
Okay. First off, did the sanctions against the Houston Astros fit the crime?
Now, this is the third time we're talking about this in the show, but I think this is one of the biggest stories in sport. In fact, I really believe that despite the fact that the AFC and the NFC championships were played this weekend, basketball is midseason, both in the NBA and college at the college ranks and so forth. College football was just played. I think this is the biggest thing. I think it's worth addressing again. Mm-hmm. The question was, did the sanctions against the Astros fit the crime? I think they did. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
This will resonate in Major League Baseball and in the world of sport, I think, for a long time to come. Remember what happened to them. And I mentioned this earlier in our segment with Carlos. The manager was fired, A.J. Hinch. Not only is he a manager, he's a successful manager. He took them to the World Series won just 2 years ago. So that was a big firing. They fired their GM. They also, as a result, one of the players at the time was Carlos Beltran. He's now the manager, or was the manager as a week ago, of the Mets. He resigned. Alex Cora, who won the championship with the Boston Red Sox, was an assistant coach. He's been fired. Mm-hmm. And this is a big deal just from that standpoint alone. But also $5 million. And this is the biggest thing. They lost their first and second round draft picks this year and next year. I thought this does fit the crime. I have a friend in particular who says this is not near enough, but I'm fine with it. Question 2.
Question 2, does MLB have it right to disallow ineligible players even after they die?
I don't really think this makes all that much of a difference. There's only 2 players of note on this point anyway, and that's Joe Jackson and Pete Rose. Joe Jackson, of course, died many decades ago, and Joe Jackson was known because he's a .356 hitter. He's the 4th best batting average hitter of all time, but he was a member of the Chicago Black Sox team. It was just a play on the term Chicago White Sox in the 1919 World Series, where he took money to throw the game for bettors. He's been dead for a long time, and actually, I don't think there are any relatives of him living. And Pete Rose is still living, but the point is that once Pete Rose dies, you can't petition Major League Baseball. Once they're ineligible, whether alive or dead, they're not getting into the Hall of Fame. Question number 3, brother.
Number 3, are the 2 best NFL teams in the Super Bowl?
No doubt about it. By record, it would be the Chiefs from the AFC who are in it, and it would be, but it should be the Ravens by record. They were 14-2 this year in the regular season, but they lost. The Chiefs have been winning. They're representing the AFC. The team in the NFC, I don't think there's any argument against that. The San Francisco 49ers, I think they're the best 2 teams. Remember, you can have the best record, but once the playoffs start, there's only one chance. There's not a best of 5. There's not a best of 7. Whoever wins gets the right. And I think it's a great argument to say, hey, the Chiefs are the one who's there. They're the best team, and San Francisco's clearly the best. Yes, it's going to be a great Super Bowl because of that. So let's do this. I know we only got a couple minutes, folks. The stat of the week. Sometimes we do Pope quote of the week. Sometimes we do Cathlete of the week, a Catholic athlete, somebody who's involved in the world of sport. But our stat of the week, this came across, and I said, as soon as I heard this, I go, stat of the week. The LSU Tigers, going back to their great win last Monday, a week ago tonight, they've won 4 national titles in the AP era, in other words, Associated Press. That started in the 1930s. And all 4 championship games in which they won, Chris, were played in the state of Louisiana. What does the L stand for in LSU?
Louisiana.
Very good, Chris. Dang, you win 10 Gojo points. There you go.
Those are my boys. We stick together.
Those are his boys. Now, Baton Rouge is where LSU is. Hour and a half down the road is where New Orleans. But still, most people considered it a home game. It's just, I don't know if that's coincidence. I don't know if that is Providence. I have no idea what that is. I just find it fascinating, and that's why it's our stat of the week. All 4 national titles were played in the state of Louisiana, in particular New Orleans, and no exception to last week's victory. All right, folks, in conclusion, sport is not just for professional athletes, but for everyone, for pleasure, for recreation, for improving health, as well as for learning how to be a part of a team and how to win and lose graciously. That comes from our great Pope Francis. Before we go, a special thanks to Carlos Herrera, an author and blogger, Anne Stricherz, for joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio for Faith in Sport.
That's right, and we want to thank you for joining us for Faith in Sport on this Monday afternoon, and invite you to tune in again next Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 for more Faith in Sport Live with Dr. John Acquaviva and myself, Chris, the producer and co-host of Faith in Sport each week. And make sure that you tune in if you missed any of the show today to one of our encore presentation times throughout the week here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. We're also streaming online at carolinacatholicradio.org, also on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. Thanks for tuning in to Faith in Sport. Have a blessed week, everybody.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.